So my name is Jonathan Lai. I'm the Executive Director at Autism Alliance of Canada. I want to welcome you all here to the 9th Annual Canadian Autism Leadership Summit. First, I want to acknowledge the land that we're on is the unceded territory of the Nishnawbe Algonquin people. The Nishnawbe are customary keepers and defenders of the Ottawa River watershed and its tributaries. We honor their long history of welcoming many nations and to this beautiful territory, and uphold and uplift the voice and the value of our host nations. Autism Alliance respects and affirms the inherent and treaty rights of all Indigenous peoples across this land, the home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people for generations. We acknowledge that in Canada, across Turtle Island, and for all of those on live stream for today's summit, there are over 630 nation communities and 11 treaties we honor and share stewardship of the land with, along with the unceded territories in which we all live, work, and play today. So welcome. Everyone here in this room are here for a common purpose, and we want to build on the momentum that we've generated over the last decade towards a national autism strategy. For this specific summit, we have 3 goals for everybody in this room. First, it's to allow you to deepen connections with people you haven't seen for years and build new connections. We already feel the buzz in the room over the pre-summit sessions yesterday as people are coming up with ideas, dialoguing, and just catching up over these last few years, which have been very difficult for many of us. Secondly, we want to celebrate this historic moment with the passing of Bill S203. The course of commitment from many of people in this room, who I'm seeing here, that has really pushed and advocated for a national strategy, now being supported through this legislation with Bill S203 being passed. And thirdly, this summit, as every summit, is an opportunity to advance the collective work of the Alliance as we move forward to guide the development and the implementation of the National Autism Strategy. So how are we going to do that? There's going to be various member discussions that are going to occur at tables throughout the 3 days. We're inviting you to have there'll be chart paper and sticky notes, and all that information is going to be fed back, synthesized, so we can understand how we want to work moving forward, set the priorities for the community in this network that we have in this room. And who are these people? So in this room, we have, this room and online, we have 255 people. We have been sold out for the first time. The summit's our largest attendance ever. 22% of people identified as autistic and neurodivergent. There were another 14% that identified as a person with a disability. And there were 25% that were family members or support people, and then 70% that were professionals, and 11% that were students. So we have a great diversity and great representation from various groups that are interested and passionate about the issues that we're going to be discussing over the next 2 days. So with that, I'm going to introduce our board co-chair, Rebekah Kintzinger. She's an autism advocate and a founding member of the Canadian Journal of Autism Equity. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Rebekah.
Thank you, John, and good morning, all. I'm pleased to welcome you to the 2023 Summit and our return to meeting together in person as well as virtually. I am very proud to be the first autistic co-chairperson for the Alliance. And I am incredibly proud to be aligned with such a powerful national network of leaders. It's very exciting to have the opportunity to work alongside so many prominent autistic leaders, board and committee members. Together, we show our commitment to continuing to model relevant participation in the autism sector, including with the development of an autistic advisory committee. I've waited a long time to engage meaningfully with both First Voices and industry leaders. And in my time with the Autism Alliance of Canada, I can finally say that this has now been made possible. Nothing about us without us are not just pretty words. They are a call to action and our great responsibility to uphold in all that we can achieve. Over the next 2 days, we will come together to listen, to learn, to debate, and to contribute to the growing movement towards a robust national autism strategy. We are very close now. But let's be clear, we didn't get here by accident. The Alliance drove this from the very beginning. When we started as CASDA, we worked together to get the notion of a national autism strategy into public conversations. We provided national data to the federal government to illustrate how autistic Canadians, their supporters, and members of all 13 provincial and territorial governments saw the state of autism in this country. Over 10,000 voices informed and confirmed our need for a national autism strategy. And together, we got things done. We got each political party to commit to supporting the development of a national autism strategy. Our leadership was confirmed when the current government included the development of a national autism strategy in the mandate letters of not one, but 2 cabinet ministers. We collaborated with the Canadian Academies of Health Sciences in the recent review of the state of autism in Canada. Most notably, we brought the voices of autistic Canadians, their supporters, and communities to the process, ensuring meaningful inclusion. We put our values into action. We supported the Senate in their work to create an act to advance the development of an autism strategy. With unanimous Senate support, Bill S-203 was passed and forwarded to the House for review. With bipartisan support led by Mike Lake and Michael Couteau, this bill has now been passed into law through unanimous consensus of the House of Commons. Perhaps the strongest example of how when we work together, we get things done. We take great pride in our commitment to building strong relationships and facilitating effective collaboration across government departments in order to support their investments in creating a better Canada for autistic Canadians. Specifically, I wish to acknowledge the work being done by the Public Health Agency of Canada and highlight their great willingness to partner on impactful initiatives. As a national network of leaders, we, the Autism Alliance of Canada, are a powerful and formidable partner. We are an asset for this country. Over the next 2 days, you are going to contribute to the further shaping of our collective leadership. We are better and stronger together. Thank you for your continued commitment to making this a reality for autistic Canadians and our loved ones. It is now my very great pleasure to introduce to you Deputy Grand Chief Achneepineskum of the Nishnawbe Aski Nation.
Chair, good morning. Thank you very much for the comments and the opening comments that were made this morning. And greetings to everyone in the room and those that are joining virtually. My name is Achneepineskum, and I serve as a Deputy Grand Chief for Nishnawbe Aski Nation. Nishnawbe Aski Nation is composed of 49 First Nations in Northwestern and Northeastern Ontario. And I'm very honored that I get to work with a great team to pursue and implement the work and advocacy that we need to do for our children and our adults that are living with autism. I'm joining you from Thunder Bay, Ontario. So I thank you very much for providing us with this time and space for us to make some comments. And the next 2 days of this summit are critical to move the national autism strategy forward. Nishnawbe Aski Nation First Nations communities are in crisis due to the increasing high numbers of children being diagnosed or suspected of being autistic. NAN leaders are struggling to understand why there are so many who are being identified as autistic are having autistic behaviors. Children reach adulthood without even receiving the support they need or have the right to be supported. Teachers in the schools are overwhelmed. The word autism is not well understood in NAN communities. Elders say in the past that a child was thought of as a child who thought differently and were included and cared for in their community and recognized for their strengths and abilities. Now parents and caregivers wait for a diagnosis. And this has created chaos in communities as those services are very limited or do not exist at all. First Nation voices need to be at the table to ensure that a national autistic strategy that meets the needs of children all across Canada, regardless of where they live. NAN has a nation-to-nation relationship with Canada, and that has to be respected and honored. Canada's obligation is a meaningful consult and engage with NAN First Nation right holders and legislative matters that impact our citizens and communities. Provisions under the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, Article 18 and 19 of the UN Declaration affirm that states shall consult and cooperate in good faith with the Indigenous peoples concerned through their own respective institution to obtain their free, prior, and informed consent before adopting and implementing legislative or administrative means that may affect them. Recently, Jose Francisco Cali-Tazan, United Nations Rights Rapporteur, stated that despite positive measures taken by Canada, Indigenous people continue to face obstacles to fully enjoying their individual and collective human rights in this country. He called on all levels of government to implement recommendations from past reports, including the Truth and Reconciliation and the final report of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. He urges the government of Canada in the provinces and territories to advance reconciliation based on a nation-to-nation relationship with Indigenous people. There needs to be distinct approaches for Indigenous communities when it comes to the national autism strategy. Any approach needs to be based on the diverse cultures, language, and land-based approaches within our NAN First Nation communities. There needs to be substantial investment in building workforce capacity to address long wait lists and lack of early services for autistic children. There needs to be education and training in the schools and other entities where our children should be accessing resources. There needs to be pathways to access services that address the travel, navigation, and coordination of services in remote First Nations. I come from a very small community in northwestern Ontario, and we have about 320 residents in our community, and about 40% of the residents are people under the age of 25. And we have a small school, and within our school, we don't have any teachers assigned for children that require that special attention or should be getting that special attention, whether it's language or other our children that are autistic. So in my remote community, if a child wants to acquire any services or resources, they must leave the community. So many of our families have moved away from their villages to go and access services in other urban centers. And that isn't right. That we must, displace our families in other places in order for them to access services that everyone should be entitled to. There is an opportunity here to truly engage First Nations in meaningful dialogue regarding the national autism strategy. The children, youth, and families need this now, not in 2-3 years down the road. We need to do this work collectively and as equal partners. Tomorrow, you're going to be hearing from 2 of our representatives from the Nishnawbe Aski Nation. And I thank you, Bertha Sutherland and Charles Brown, for agreeing to be on the panel and to participate and to share that message from the children and the people of Nishnawbe Aski Nation. So for the next 2 days, I want to thank you, and I want to acknowledge the great work that has been done so far. And I encourage everyone to work together because we are all here for the same reason. And that is because we are advocating for the rights and to ensure that our children and adults that are living with autism can access the resources and services and live a good quality of life. Kintzinger, thank you everyone for providing me with this time and space to speak with you. Miigwech.
Thank you, Deputy Grand Chief. We're honored to have the Anishinaabe Nation as a long-standing member and having their voice with our advocacy efforts over the years. And now I would like to introduce our final speaker in this opening session, the Honorable Mike Lake, familiar to many of us, the Member of Parliament for Edmonton-Wetaskiwin.
Jonathan was worried he was going to butcher my riding name, but he didn't. So I have no notes, and I'm very tired, and I'm a politician, so I could meander a little bit here time-wise. So just a warning. What an honor to come up, and it kind of speaks to how far we've come in terms of the conversation that we're having and the level of inclusion, to come up after Rebekah and the Deputy Grand Chief and have a chance to speak. After all of these years working on these, and sometimes I would have Jaden here with me. I don't have Jaden here with me today because he was here a few weeks back, taking part in probably what was one of the better weeks that I've experienced here in my time as a member of Parliament. If he was here, it would be interesting. So he would also be very tired because I arrived at Edmonton Airport a couple of days ago at 1 p.m. and wound up taking off that day at 1:45 in the morning. So a 12-hour delay. And Jaden, of course, when we travel, he's very intrigued. He loves travel and he loves schedules. So he wouldn't have been bothered by the delay, but he would have had to know about it every 15 minutes throughout the whole thing. And then if he was here with me right now, what that would look like, he would have said hi, and he'd be on my shoulder right now. It's very early in the morning, so he would be yawning most of the time I'm speaking. So please don't do that, even as I'm mentioning it now. You're all triggered to think about yawning now, right? So and intermittently he would, because I haven't shaved, he would be pulling hairs out of my cheek and neck that I've missed. So he's a good helper here, and then he'd want to give a high five to everybody in the room as soon as we were done. So it's kind of almost kind of like he's here as I'm talking about that, and he's especially is because of what I'm talking about. I mentioned a few weeks ago was a really good week. We were able to work with members from all parties to get S203 passed in the House with unanimous consent. Yeah. An important context to that, just to make sure that credit goes where credit's due. That bill actually originated in the Senate. Leo Husakos, a conservative senator working with Peter Beam, a senator appointed by Prime Minister Trudeau, working together with other senators to get something passed unanimously in the Senate through the Senate process, at the committee process, where some of you would have testified. They made the bill stronger, better language. I think most people in the room would agree if you're reading the bill. And then it came to the House. We just had one committee meeting in the House. We passed it, got it to committee expedited, had one committee meeting in the House because the bill was pretty fantastic in its form based on the work that had been done. And then we managed to get it to the House, where we got unanimous consent. And what that looked like, just so everybody, that's very rare to get unanimous consent. You might have noticed the wording on division. The bill has the word federal in it, right? Which can be a challenge for the Bloc. But the Bloc members of Parliament really supported the spirit of what we were trying to do. So we wanted to kind of navigate that obstacle a little bit. And I'm going to give a few other shout outs. So Michael Coteau on the Liberal side seconded the bill. So I carried it in the House. He seconded it. But in absolutely valuable to getting it passed were Don Davies from the NDP and a guy named Jean-Michel Guérin from the Bloc, who just helped me at the committee process in the background and then in the House to get this through. So there's a lot of things that go on in the background, but I want to make sure that everybody understands that whatever your political affiliation, your favorite party helped get this bill passed. No one person or one party gets credit for this. So let's. And I think I'll also maybe just use the opportunity, if I can. I've got my own private members motion, and I'll use the opportunity to just mention that, because you might, if I've got your email address, you might get an email on me and email from me on this, and it's connected. So what I'm trying to do is take the work we're doing on autism, connect it more broadly to international work and to intellectual developmental disability more broadly, and then even connect it to disability. And we decided to focus on education, which is one of the core issues that we're all focused on as we're trying to move this thing. And so it's a motion which is non-binding. And what this motion says, it's non-binding, but we debate it, and then we have to vote on it, and it gives us something to point to as we're moving forward on education. It says, there's a little bit of preamble that gives us the stats at a global level for inclusion in education. By the way, they're abysmal, the stats at a global level. 50% of kids not in school, right? And so it says, where the Canadian government spends money on education, domestically or internationally, clear consideration must be given to the maximum inclusion of people with disabilities, including people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And that language, yeah. And I'll close because I know Jonathan is running a tight ship here. And the last thing you need is to hear too long of speeches from politicians. But I'll just close with the language in that's very precise. It includes the broader disability community because we need to do better broadly in education, inclusive education, like a lot of things. But all too often, even in inclusive conversations around things like education and employment, people with intellectual and developmental disabilities tend to be excluded, even as we're having conversations about inclusion. So we want to make sure that we're broadly including everybody as we move forward. And I'll just close, as we do all of these different things, let's recognize that, yes, this is going to be fantastic for autistic Canadians, but this is going to be fantastic for all of us when we're benefiting from the skills and abilities and contributions that autistic Canadians, like so many of you in the room, are bringing to the table. So thank you so much for including me in this day. I'm going to be around. Look forward to talking to as many of you as I can. Thank you.